Jake had suffered from migraines his entire life, and sometimes they became debilitating. His last attack was more than a year ago, and he was grateful for every day without a migraine. If you've never had a severe migraine, it can be hard to explain, but I assure you that prolonged pain and suffering can make you wish for death. You just want the world to end and let you die in peace. A migraine of that level was rare for Jake, but he knew that when it started, he needed to pay attention to his body and rest, as he had learned over his 35 years. Despite being a large, muscular man, something as simple as a migraine could incapacitate him. It was Wednesday morning when he recognized the early signs: double vision, dizziness, and a slight throbbing in his head. He knew he couldn't risk driving, so he ordered a taxi to get home. He told his secretary to cancel his meetings for the day and that he would inform her later if he would be coming to the office tomorrow. These headaches could last a week, and he didn't want to take any chances. He returned home, took 2 pills, grabbed an ice pack, and headed straight to the living room, which was next to their large master bedroom. In the corner, he had a chair he used for such rare occasions. He could place the ice pack on his head, close his eyes to block out the light, and simply try to meditate mindlessly. He felt the pain intensify, placed the ice pack on his head, closed his eyes, and tried to relax. Turning off the light in the living room and drawing the curtains, he sat there for about 2 hours. It seemed that this migraine would not be as severe as he had feared. If he was lucky, he might be able to function in a couple of hours. He heard some sounds downstairs and assumed it was his wife, with whom he had lived for 10 years, and decided to stay seated as he wasn't ready for a conversation. Linda was familiar with his condition and had learned to leave him alone until his attack passed. She always tried to be quiet and let him rest when she knew he was home. Apparently, Linda didn't know Jake was home since his car wasn't in the driveway, and of course, he had no reason to be home as he usually came home every evening at 6. Jake was able to block out the noise and continue his meditation to control the pain. But suddenly, he realized that Linda was not alone. He heard another voice, a male voice. He opened his eyes and realized that his wife was coming upstairs to their bedroom, and someone was with her. He remained still and silent, carefully listening to their conversation. She was talking on her mobile phone, and they were both giggling. Jake found this strange and thought he was dreaming until he realized she was talking to Shelley, his brother's wife. He was instantly brought back to reality when he heard what she was saying. "Oh, Shelley, I'm with him right now. Thank you for setting up this date, and I hope you're right about his size. I just hope it doesn't hurt as much as it did for you last week. He said he would call you tomorrow to set up another date. I'll give you a full report later. I have to go. Thanks again." The pain in Jake's heart suddenly became stronger than his migraine. He didn't know what he was going to do and realized that they had no idea he was there. The living room was adjacent to the bedroom, and the chair he was sitting in was out of sight. He had a front row seat, completely hidden from the participants. As he sat there, his blood boiled, which did nothing to ease his headache. He felt nauseous from both the migraine and the unfolding events. His heart was breaking, and tears welled up in his eyes as he realized that the woman he loved and cherished had just torn their marriage apart. Completely silent, he sat and listened as pants fell to the floor, and this guy declared how beautiful his sexy wife's breasts were. Jake was falling into a black hole from which there was no escape. He heard them lie down on the bed and then listened as his wife told this guy, Blake, how big he was and how she wasn't used to handling something so large, wondering if he would fit. His anger grew as he heard his soon-to-be ex-wife pleasuring Blake with an enthusiasm he hadn't seen in years. In fact, she hadn't pleasured Jake in years, often complaining that she didn't enjoy doing it with him. Using all his willpower to restrain himself, he waited for the right moment to enter their world, and he didn't have to wait long. Giving them a few minutes to enjoy each other, he realized it was time to say hello. Suppressing his pain and anger, he stood up and mustered the strength to face the two lovers in the marital bed. He didn't really need to be quiet, as the lovers were making quite a noise enjoying each other. Linda was looking into Blake's eyes, begging him to do it harder, when she caught sight of Jake standing right next to her at the moment she was betraying him in their bed. "Shit. Honey, what are you doing here?" "I can explain," she screamed, trying to push Blake off her. Blake ignored her protests and, using his full weight, continued what he was doing while she looked pleadingly into Jake's eyes, shouting at Blake to stop. It was too late. The pain in his head and heart was too intense. Jake walked to his nightstand, took out a loaded Glock G45, and shot Blake straight in the left temple. He immediately collapsed onto Linda, who lay in shock with Blake's body on top of her. With tears in his eyes, Jake looked at Linda and said, "I loved you with all my heart, and you took away everything I cherished. My heart is broken." He fired the next bullet into her head and watched as the life drained from her body. The two lifeless lovers now lay together on the stained sheets. Jake picked up the phone and called his brother Robbie. He spoke in a terrifyingly calm voice for someone who had just committed a double murder. Robbie answered and said, "Hey bro, how's it going?" Robbie listened carefully. "I just caught Linda in bed with this guy Blake, who I think is the new tennis instructor. I heard her talking to Shelly before I walked in on them in my bed. From what I heard, I think Shelly might be involved with him too. You might want to keep an eye on her." "Robbie, stop talking and listen to me. I just killed them both in our bed. I'm not joking. I don't want you to go through what I just went through, so find out if she's cheating on you. Between these migraines and this betrayal, I can't take it anymore. I want you to know that I love you and I'm sorry. Goodbye, Robbie." And the phone went silent. Before putting the next bullet in his own head, Jake called 911 and reported the double murder and suicide, making sure they had the correct address. They found Jake in the migraine chair, holding the gun, his head resting against the nearby wall. It was a horrific scene when Robbie arrived 20 minutes later. A year later. "I am Robbie, and Jake was my older brother. This happened a year ago. It was the worst day of my life, and it profoundly changed my world. Losing my older brother because of his unfaithful wife was hard for everyone, especially for me. He was my best friend, and I loved him dearly. When everyone learned that Linda had an affair in their own home and caused the murders and suicide, she became a hated figure in this close-knit community. I was still struggling with my anger and depression over my brother's death. I never told Shelly what Jake had said and decided to keep a close watch on my wife. After hearing what Jake said shortly before his suicide, I became paranoid and hired a top-notch security company to install all kinds of monitoring devices and software. It took 2 weeks to get everything set up, and the monitoring began. If Shelly was involved in Linda's infidelity, I wanted to uncover the extent of her own unfaithfulness and act accordingly. My pain never subsided, and I became obsessed with finding out how my wife was implicated in this matter. Sex between Shelly and me became rare and cold after Jake's suicide and the revelation of Shelly's involvement in Linda's infidelity. When I received confirmation that Shelly was cheating on me, I became angry and relentless, wanting only to get revenge on Shelly for both her betrayal and her role in Jake's suicide. Over the course of the year, the security firm provided me with countless hours of video and audio recordings of Shelly and her lover. Watching her sleep with another man was painful, but after my love for her died, it was some of Shelly's conversations with her lover that hurt the most. Certain phrases replayed in my head repeatedly. "Why do you stay with him? I mean, you said sex with him is boring, and you don't do half the things with him that you do with me. I don't get it. Why not just leave him and move in with me? You said he doesn't make love to you. Do you think he knows about us? No, he's still mourning his brother's death. He's depressed, and I'm not pressuring him. I don't need sex with him as long as I have you, baby. Listen, I love him, and I will never leave him. I've told you since we started this 2 years ago. It's just sex. I don't love you, but I enjoy being with you, just like I enjoyed being with Blake. You guys were the best thing that ever happened in my sex life. I really miss him, and I can't believe he's gone. Yeah, I miss him too. I can't believe your crazy brother-in-law shot him. I hope your husband isn't as crazy as his brother. I don't want the same thing to happen to us. Don't worry, love. I would never bring you to our house like she did. We're fine, and we'll never get caught. I won't let that happen. It would devastate poor Robbie, and I would never want to hurt him, which is why I will never leave him. You'll just have to be satisfied with me. I can live with that." After Robbie discovered her infidelity, he formulated his plan. Shelly was sleeping with Jared Roberts, the assistant tennis coach who was promoted to head coach after Blake's untimely death. A few weeks later, Robbie got the opportunity he had been waiting for. Jared was invited to a banquet celebrating the country club's award for the best tennis program in the area. He called Shelley and told her about the banquet, and she was thrilled at the prospect of staying in a hotel and spending the entire night with him. Conveniently, Robbie told Shelley that he had a 2-week business trip coming up, which wasn't unusual. The dates coincided with the banquet. Robbie wanted to make sure Shelley had enough rope to hang herself. Sure enough, the next day, she called Jared and gave him the good news. She convinced Jared to extend the trip, staying for 3 nights at a hotel in Orlando, and promised she would rock his world. Of course, the idea of having a high-class mistress for a full 3 days seemed enticing to Jared, and he agreed. Over the next week, they talked about it on the phone and in their messages. It was Shelley's idea to turn this getaway into a pretend honeymoon, telling Jared she wanted to be his new bride and wife for those 3 days. To make her plan more realistic, she even suggested buying a new wedding ring for the occasion and booking a honeymoon suite at the hotel. They would tell the staff they were newlyweds to draw attention and feel the thrill. She even told Jared that she wished it were real and that he was truly her husband. Reading all these texts enraged Robbie and fueled his desire for revenge. He was going to enjoy watching her face when she saw everything she loved crumble. Shelley spent all her time working out at the gym. She even waxed herself a week before Robbie's departure. She planned to surprise her husband by telling him she did it for him to spice things up. But, of course, she did it for her upcoming honeymoon. Robbie was not impressed and wanted nothing to do with his cheating, soon-to-be ex-wife. She was planning to spend 3 days with Jared as his wife in a pretend honeymoon. This would be her first extended time alone with another man since she got married 10 years ago. She and Jared thought it would be romantic. She bought several sexy outfits, bikinis, and lingerie for their rendezvous and planned everything out. Robbie was stunned and envious of the effort she was putting into this guy. The love he once felt for her had now vanished. The sense of such a deep betrayal drained him of the last bit of affection he had left. It was all over, and it was time for Shelley to feel the pain. On the way to the hotel, Robbie called Shelley but only got her voicemail. He left her a message, saying that he loved her and would see her in 10 days. Shelley called him back an hour later to make sure he didn't suspect anything. She had to finish pleasuring Jared for the 3rd time that day before she called Robbie. She told him that she loved him and that the kids were at their friend's house. She said she would order pizza when the kids got home and that they would watch movies all night. She expressed how much she missed him. She said goodbye and told him she loved him more than anything and couldn't wait for him to come home. Robbie felt like throwing up. He simply couldn't believe how easily she lied to him. He arrived at the hotel and handed his car to the valet. Robbie asked the concierge if Mr. and Mrs. Roberts had checked in earlier. His anger intensified when the concierge confirmed that the newlyweds, Mr. and Mrs. Roberts, had checked into their honeymoon suite the previous day. He contacted the hotel's restaurants to find out if they had reservations for the evening. Sure enough, the main restaurant confirmed their reservation for 6 p.m. that evening for Mr. and Mrs. Roberts. Strategically choosing the best spot to observe, Robbie closely watched the couple throughout their dinner, remaining unnoticed. When they were both leaving, he had already positioned himself near the entrance. The plan was to make it look like he was entering the restaurant at the same time they were leaving. He saw the newlyweds holding hands after they had paid the bill and were about to leave. The timing was perfect. He positioned himself just as they were exiting. He deliberately turned the corner to bump into them at that exact moment. Robbie collided with Shelley's companion, almost knocking him over, and everyone turned to look. They both stumbled slightly and regained their balance. Smiling, Robbie stepped back and spoke to him. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Excuse me." Then he noticed Shelley and stood there with his mouth open, feigning shock and surprise. She stood there in her sexy dress, wishing she could run and hide. Her worst fear had come true. She froze with wide eyes, completely stunned. "Caught. Shelley, is that you? What are you doing here?" Robbie said with a rehearsed expression of disbelief. Jared took a few minutes to understand who he was and what was happening. Robbie then stepped back and looked at his wife as if he was shocked by her appearance. He couldn't believe how she looked. She was wearing a very short dress with a deep neckline and no bra, nylon stockings, CFM pumps, along with glamorous makeup and hair. God, I wish she dressed like that for me, he thought to himself. Wow, that's quite an outfit, Shelley. I've never seen you look so sexy. And who is this? I'm confused, Shelley. Shelley realized she was caught and tried to think of something to say, but she just stood there with her mouth open. She attempted to compose herself and said, Robbie, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Jacksonville. Well, plans changed. You know how it is with my job. But what the hell is going on here? You're dressed like a mistress in a sexy dress with some guy? Let's go to the lobby and talk, Robbie nearly shouted, grabbing her by the arm. Once in the lobby, Robbie spoke again. When we talked earlier, you said you were staying home with the kids. What are you doing here, and who are you on a date with? Robbie, it's not what you think. It's not what I think. It's not what I think. He repeated twice in a stunned voice, looking at her hand and then into her eyes. Where are your wedding rings? Holy crap, have you been cheating on me? She looked at her ring finger, where the large diamond ring was missing and replaced by a thin gold band that her lover had given her for their pretend honeymoon weekend. She wanted to run and hide, but there was nowhere to go. Robbie, I love you. This means nothing. What means nothing? That you're not wearing your wedding ring? Why are you wearing another gold ring? Look at how you're dressed. You've never dressed like this for me. You left town with some guy, wearing a new gold ring instead of your wedding ring? Are you leaving me for him? Is that it? You say it's not what I think, but it sure looks like something is going on here. He continued to apply pressure, enjoying every second of her confusion. Robbie turned to the tennis player and asked in a strong voice, Why don't you tell me what's going on? Shelley looked at Jared in fear, not knowing what he would say. Dude, relax. Like your wife said, nothing's going on. There's an awards banquet at the hotel, and she was kind enough to accompany me to support your country club. She's just doing me a favor. Everything's fine, man. Now, with a wide smile, Robbie struggled not to laugh at this idiot. Oh, I see. So, she's just being nice, and she's here simply as your date for the ceremony. Let me ask you something. Are you staying in the same room here at the hotel? And don't lie, because I'll want to check both rooms before I leave. They both looked at the floor, saying nothing. Shelley spoke first. Sweetheart, I love you. Please don't be upset. It was just supposed to be a few days, and no one would have known. So, you're here with him for a few days, staying in the same room, having sex, not wearing my wedding rings, but only a new gold ring. Oh my God. Are you pretending to be his wife here? Are you on a honeymoon? Already knowing the answer and feigning shock, Robbie didn't relent. Honey, it's not what you think, she said, trying to convince him that her infidelity could be explained. With mock rising anger, Robbie loudly demanded, Answer the damn question. I'll go to the front desk and get the answers, so you'd better start talking. Are you staying in the same room? Answer me. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Are you having sex? And remember, I'm not an idiot. Yes, Shelley sobbed. Here's the main question. Are you pretending to be his wife? Crying, she said, It's not what you think, baby. Answer the damn question. Did you check into this hotel as Mr. and Mrs. Rogers? In a tearful and embarrassed voice, she said, Yes. All right, I get it. I'll leave you and your new husband alone. I'm going home and will contact a lawyer in the morning. We're done, Shelley. You threw away my love, our marriage, and our life together, all for a fling with this tennis-playing jerk. No, baby, please, I love you, and you don't understand. I don't want a divorce. You're my husband, and I can't lose you. Please try to understand. I don't love him. It was just something I needed. Please understand. No, I don't understand. All right, I'll give you one more chance to explain it to me so I can understand. Tell me why I should tolerate my wife sleeping with another man and pretending to be his wife. She pleaded again. Please, try to understand. It was supposed to last just a few days, and I needed it. It's just sex. I don't love him. I only love you. And that's it? I'm supposed to be okay with you sleeping with another man for a few days so you can have a bit of fun? Shelley was now in hysterics, sobbing into her hands. She realized what she had done and knew she had no valid excuse. All she could do was beg him to understand her need for sex with someone else. Robbie, I'm so sorry. I was stupid. I didn't think. I love you. It was just about sex. I know it sounds bad, but we can get through this. Silence. The tennis guy started to get annoyed and impatient and spoke up. Hey man, back off a bit. Can't you see how upset she is? Robbie turned to Jared and gave him a death stare. Shut up, asshole, and get out of my sight. Leave me and my real wife alone. You've already destroyed our marriage. Isn't that enough for today? Jared stood up, put his hand on Shelley's shoulder, and said, I'll be in our room, baby. Come up when you're done. She angrily pushed his hand away, not wanting anything to do with him at that moment. Robbie laughed at this. Suddenly, she no longer wanted to be with her lover, and he relished the whole scene. Robbie continued to mock Shelley while she sat there, sobbing, Dear, don't be so rude to your new husband. I must be ruining your honeymoon, right? We both know you want this and that you don't want to be with me anymore. We both know you don't love me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have cheated and shown me such disrespect. Jared left, and they were alone. Please stay with me, she said with pleading eyes. For a few minutes. Tell me, how long have you been with him? She lied again, saying it was the first time they were together. He was stunned at how easily she could lie to him. Shelley, did you ever disrespect me in your conversations with him? You know, talk badly about me or criticize me when you were together or during sex. Again, she lied. No, baby, I would never do that. I love you so much. You mean everything to me. You have to believe me. Let's just leave, go home right now, and be together. Robbie took out his phone and turned off the audio recording. Then he started playing a playlist of their conversations recorded over the last 6 months. First of all, I know you've been cheating on me for the past 2 years. Secondly, can you explain this to me? The sound was loud and clear. Audio file 1. Don't worry about him. He has no idea. Audio file 2. I hate having sex with him. He's so boring in bed. Audio file 3. I'm not leaving him. I love him, but not for sex. Audio file 4. I stay with him because he's a good provider and father. I'll never let him go. Audio file 5. Baby, you're 10 times better in bed than my loser husband. Audio file 6. I love your size and how you turn me on. Audio file 7. I belong to you, not him. Audio file 8. On our honeymoon, I want you to do whatever you want. He'll never have that. There were over 50 audio files, each mocking her husband and degrading their marriage. Your contempt for me was beyond anything I could have ever imagined. Your comments were far more than just sexual play. They were hurtful and disrespectful. Unfortunately, your words will haunt me forever. She had never looked so apathetic, shocked, sad, and essentially destroyed. And it was satisfying to see her realize that she had ruined their marriage and that nothing would ever be the same for her. Shelley, this is why it's over between us. I can't take your lies anymore. I know you've been cheating and sleeping with other men for at least the past 2 years. What you don't know is that Jay called me the night he shot his wife and your former lover. He heard you talking to Linda on the phone about how much you liked Blake's size. I knew about your infidelity, your lies, and your lack of respect for me. I wanted to see how far you'd go, and you never slowed down. Through your actions and comments, you made it clear that to you, I was just a good provider and a father to the kids. You can stop this charade and your lies because I have recordings of all your calls and messages. I know how you feel about me, our sex life, and what a bad lover I am. You see, I know all of it, and soon everyone else will too, unless you do what I say. You corrupted my brother's wife, helped her become as vile as you are, and you bear some responsibility for that tragic day. You encouraged her to be with Blake. You even set up their date. Because of your actions and deceit, both she and my brother are dead. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me, she said, holding her head in her hands and sobbing uncontrollably. I'm sure you wondered why I showed up here tonight. It wasn't an accident. I knew about your plans for this week. What you planned was so unbelievable that I just had to see it with my own eyes. I even knew about your plans to play the role of husband and wife on this trip and to erase me from your life. I have to admit, it was painful to hear, and it hurt more than you can imagine. Shelley continued to cry. You broke your vows, destroyed our marriage, and disrespected our children. What's worse, you were involved in the affair and the death of my sister-in-law and brother. There's no coming back from this. I don't want you coming back home after your honeymoon weekend is over. I think you should stay at your mother's house. You better tell them what you did, because if they call me and ask why we broke up, I will tell them the truth and share everything I know. Robbie waited a long time before continuing, allowing everything he had said to sink in. I will be reasonable, but you will sign the divorce papers without contesting the agreement. If you fight me, I will show all the videos and audios I have to everyone, including your parents. The kids are old enough to decide who they want to live with, and after we explain your infidelity, lies, and deceit, I am sure they will choose to live with me. Shelley, what's truly sad about all this is that I loved you with all my heart and wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. When Jake told me about you, I didn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it, but I learned the terrible truth, and my heart was broken. You will have to live with that guilt and loss of love forever. We will never be together again. Robbie stood up, left Shelley sobbing, and drove home. I never came to terms with my brother's death. Avenging my wife didn't bring peace. 5 years later, I met a woman in a cafe, and we became close friends. I never remarried because I could never trust another woman the way I once did. We dated for a few years and remained friends. Shelley had a nervous breakdown and was hospitalized for a year after the divorce was finalized. She was never invited back to the town where people knew about her involvement in Jake and Linda's deaths and her betrayal of her family. She lost custody of the kids and saw them only once every